A former dancer, Mary studied structural integration with Ida Rolf. She has taught movement and bodywork classes since 1994 and was chair of the movement faculty of the Rolf Institute of Structural Integration in Boulder, Colorado. The New Rules of Posture is the second of 3 books Mary has published, along with numerous articles in magazines including Massage, Shape, Men's Fitness, Somatics Journal, and Massage and Bodywork. Her newest book, Your Body Mandala, Posture as a Path to Presence, is coming out at the end of the year. You can look for it on her website or on Amazon. She has videos, a blog, and much more on her website, which is www.healyourposture.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Bond.
Thank you all so much for coming. I know we had an eclipse and there were other exciting things going on today, and here you are. So sitting, standing, and moving in the modern world is not always comfortable, but we get used to it. A lot of times we don't notice our discomfort until it becomes full-blown pain. So you folks are Google, you're known for innovation, and what I hope to do today is to inspire you to help redesign the way the world works so it could be more body-friendly. So because I want you to feel what I'm talking about in your bodies, I'm going to ask you to stand up and do things every so often. So now is one of those times if you would just stand up, it would be great. Okay, so bring your arms way high, make fists, tighten your elbows, tighten your knees, push down in the floor, stretch your spine as high as possible, and then go side to side just a little. So notice you're stretching, but you're contracting at the same time. That's important. Really stretch, really reach. Okay, now open your hands, scrunch up your eyes, open your mouth like you're yawning. More stretch, more. Okay, now you could let go. And feel your body right now. A little energy moving through it. Yeah? So, what you just did is pandiculation. And most mammals do this many times a day, sometimes up to 50 times. But humans feel a little sheepish doing it in public. Nonetheless, you felt there was an effect, I think. Nod your head, yeah? There was an effect. So what might be news is that that effect matters, it's important. So we'll talk a little more about pandiculation as we go forward. This is cover art for the book you just picked up. And the gist of that book is that posture isn't a position. It's not what you do with your shoulders or your head or your gut. Posture is your response to this moment and the next moment and the next. Every succeeding moment requires you to respond. We're not aware of it, and we get habits about doing it. But basically, posture is how you feel stable and safe in a pretty unstable world. And so transforming your posture amounts to creating different strategies for how you feel safe inside to meet the world. So it involves body awareness, self-awareness. It's not a quick fix. So this book is not something you're going to benefit from tomorrow. It takes a little patience. So how do we sit, stand, and move in this crazy modern world? In a world that increasingly ignores what the body is made to do, which is to move. All organisms move in order to survive. We know that. There's a Dr. Scholl's ad on television right now. It says, "Born to move." So we have this in our consciousness, and yet we don't really embody it in our being. So how many of you have standing desks? Yeah, do you stand at them? It's helpful. Sometimes you do, sometimes, yeah. So standing desks and ergonomic chairs are good ideas, but they're external fixes to the problem of our ancient bodies in this modern world. So I want to dig a little deeper into the nature of your bodies. I want to talk about what you're made of, the ground substance of your body, and how to take care of that. I want to talk about the architectural principle that holds you together, and about perception, and what perception has to do with posture. And then I'll give you some advice about sitting, since you insist on doing that. And we'll talk about, in the end, exercise and movement and the future of the human body. So that's my plan for this little talk. And I wanted to share with you a little about where I'm coming from. This is my teacher. Her name was Ida Rolf, and she was a biochemist, but her passionate interest was in human structures. So she developed a manual therapy she called structural integration. And so her students and her clients nicknamed it Rolfing. She didn't much like that, but now most of you have heard of Rolfing, yes? Okay, so this therapy looks at the body as living architecture, which has been distorted and diminished by accidents and compensations and poor use, like sitting all day without moving. She viewed pain as the product, mostly the product of imbalanced structure. She had two kind of revolutionary ideas for the 60s. This expresses one of them. It's her logo. And she taught that the body is organized by gravity, just like this building is organized by gravity. So if the body could be balanced, then gravity wouldn't tear the body down, but would in fact actually contribute to health. So that was her first idea. Her second idea is that the body's connective tissue is plastic. It's able to change. So through manipulation, she found that she could restore balance to structures that had become distorted and twisted. She was the first to recognize the importance of connective tissue, what we now call fascia. She died in 1979, but the first research conference about fascia, the Fascia Congress, wasn't held until 2006. It happened at Harvard, which was exciting for us, body workers, but it was also attended by many researchers from around the world who had become interested in this aspect of the body that had mostly been ignored. So this is a simple metaphor to share with you how fascia pervades your body. The rind of the orange is like an all-over bodysuit just under your skin. If we peeled off all the skin, we would see a fascial layer. It's literally a bodysuit. It contains everything else. And underneath that are the segments of the orange represent the various organs and muscles and larger structures that each have a containing membrane, as well as blood vessels and nerves and bones all have a wrapping of fascia around them. And all of this fascia is continuous. And the little orange bits inside the segments, you know how your fingers get sticky when you eat an orange? So those little bits represent cells. So each cell in your body has its own fascial membrane. So it's been suggested that if you took out everything else from the body, except the fascia, you'd still have a recognizable human shape. This is an 18th century painting of a dissection. It hangs in the Wellcome Library in London. So until recently, anatomists stripped away the fascia and discarded it so they could look at the interesting things, the liver and the brain and the circulatory system and so on. And that was good. We needed that. But what it did was perpetuate the idea that your body is made up of an assemblage of parts rather than that it develops out of wholeness, which I'll talk about a little more later. This photo is an endoscopic image of living fascia. It's magnified 130 times. And it's the work of a man named Jean-Claude Gimbertot. He's a French microsurgeon. He uses endoscopy in his work. So this means putting little cameras and lights and microscopes inside the living tissue. So he has been so awed by what he saw that he's developed a collection of these images. And I can give you his website after the talk. Appreciate these geometric forms. The immune system, the fascia system is now being studied the same way that the immune system and the circulatory system and all the other systems are being studied. So there are three main constituents of fascia. One is collagen. It's like protein fibers, which, when they're woven tightly together, have the strength of steel. There are also elastic fibers that you could stretch to 100% of their capacity, and then they could relax back without deforming their shape. And the third constituent is a watery matrix, something like egg white, kind of mucousy stuff. And they're swimming in there cells like immune cells and fat cells and nerve cells. So this was very interesting to us in the bodywork world, that there were nerve cells in fascia. We knew from doing Dr. Rolf's work that there was some kind of communication through the fascia, but we had all kinds of other ideas about what was doing it. And there are actually sensory nerve fibers in the fascia. In fact, estimated 6 times as many nerve fibers in fascia as in muscle. So when you think you're moving through your neuromuscular system, it's actually the fascial system that is allowing that to come into full expression. A lot of these nerve sensors in the fascia are called interoceptors. That means they tell you what's going on inside your body. So when you feel bloated, or you have a tickle or an itch, or you have sexual arousal or air hunger, all of these kinds of sensations in your body are because of the interoceptors in your fascia. So you might think that interoception is a way you know that you have a body. A lot of different textures fascia can assume. It can have the transparency of glass, so your corneas are fascia. Your breasts are fascia full of lots of fat cells. When you have a scar, that's the collagen fibers woven tightly together to protect the wound. It's also very fluid, gelatin-like, slidey, slippy, slidey. So when we watch our most beautiful athletes and dancers, what we're seeing is not just their superb neuromuscular system, but also the health of their fascial system. Note the last point. Stress and immobility dehydrates your fascia and makes it stiff and makes you stiff. So stress and immobility are the characteristics of the modern workplace. The powerful leaping of a kangaroo is due not just to its powerful leg muscles, but to the high percentage of fascia in its body. So when those elastic fibers stretch through movement, it stores kinetic energy, which is then released and the kangaroo rebounds. Interesting thing here is that our bodies, human bodies, have the same high percentage of fascia in them as a kangaroo. So if you think about that, it's clear that we're made for leaping and running and not for sitting. This is a video, one of Gilles Berthaud's videos of living fascia. You'll see the yellow fat cells along the bottom, tendinous material, the collagen, across the middle of the slide, and a blood vessel you might be able to see moving. So where that's happening is just below your elbow on your forearm. So find that place on yourself. I'm going to play the video again, but if you make just a pinch of skin with your finger pads, just a gentle pinch of skin, and pull up on it. And when the video starts, you could slowly let down on the pinch and then draw up again as the video goes up. So now it's coming down, you're letting go of your pinch, and then you're pulling up. These images are so amazing. Yeah. So that kind of shape-shifting is going on inside your body with every movement that you make, while you're breathing, while you're brushing your teeth, while you're rolling over in bed. This is another one of Gilles Berthaud's videos, and it takes place in the same place, but it's a little different. It's magnified 10 times. The other one was magnified 20 times. And this one is also a deeper place in the forearm. So take the palm of one hand and press it lightly against the skin just below your elbow, as if those two layers of skin were adhered to each other. And then what you do is just a gentle pulling down of the skin toward your wrist. And you might be able to feel that you're not just pulling on skin, but other layers are moving underneath. And then draw up toward your elbow with that same thing. So that's what's going on here. The bubbles that you see are because of the difference in pressure between what's going on inside the incision and the air outside. Pressure differential. Notice the changing direction of these microfibers, how they keep reorienting themselves, changing their polarities. It's like a crystalline kaleidoscope inside you. So you keep your fascia healthy by moving. And the important thing is movement in many directions, so multi-directional movement, not forward movement that's repetitive. So if you had the choice between going to a dance jam or working out on an exercycle, for the benefit of your fascia, you need to go dancing. Probably for other reasons too. Whole body stretches are good for the fascia, so that pandiculation that we did before, as long as it's a whole body stretch and not just, this kind of stretch of isolated muscles that people do, that's a different thing. Gentle, bouncy movements, so if you went folk dancing, that would be good for your fascia. Not big leaps, but just gentle bouncing. Micro movements. We'll be doing some micro movements in a few minutes. These are small movements that you can barely see. Certainly, you can feel them. Massage can help. All of these suggestions don't cover strength training or aerobic training. You need that too, of course. This is fascia specific. This image of an embryo is a development about 4 to 5 weeks. But fascia emerges in embryonic development earlier than this at about 2 weeks. So fascia researchers suggest that muscles, bones, organs, in fact, all other living tissue, may in fact be specializations within the unified medium of fascia. So that's a very different way of thinking about how we evolve than the idea that we're just a bunch of parts stuck together. Everything in the fascial system is interconnected and fluid, and you can feel this when you breathe. So let's try. So if you would just be comfortable, and if you feel like closing your eyes, sometimes that helps you feel your body more readily. So just go inside and feel the sort of swelling and settling of your chest as you inhale and exhale. Just a little expansion and then diminishment. And you could feel it probably also in your belly, a little puffing up and letting go. And then turn your attention to your shoulder blades and see if you can feel them sliding maybe apart from each other, maybe up a little bit as you inhale, and resting down. Shoulder blades move apart so the rib cage can expand. And then drop your awareness down into your forearms. There are 2 bones in your forearms, in each forearm, and there's a membrane in between. So imagine that membrane swelling and settling as you breathe in and out. And then come down into your lower legs. See if you can go that far down and feel your fascia moving as you breathe in between the lower leg bones. It's interesting that the place where you feel a sensation in your brain is the same place that you imagine a sensation. It's the sensory cortex. So it doesn't matter if you think you're only imagining it. It's good enough. Drop down into your soles. See if you can feel that when you inhale, there's the slightest pressure down into your shoes. And let yourself imagine that tensile matrix that we saw earlier. Imagine it throughout your whole body. All those little fibers changing their orientation. Thank you. You can open your eyes. Could you feel a bit? Imagine you felt? But it will be a while before our culture learns to see the body as continuous and connected. We think of the body in bits and pieces. When we have a pain, we blame it on an isolated part. We exercise isolated, separate muscles. We do lat pulls and ab crunches. And when we want to portray images of power, we just add more and stiffer parts. This model suggests a way of conceiving how the body is held together. So it is, you're seeing struts held in place by a network of tension. In terms of the body, the elastic lines are your soft tissues and the struts are your bones. Ideally, your bones are floating in a network of soft tissue. This architectural principle is called tensional integrity, or as Buckminster Fuller called it, tensegrity. And you can see that if you change the tension in just one of those strings, the whole structure would change its shape, change its orientation a little bit. And that's true inside us. That's how we work too. even the vertebrae, the individual vertebrae in your spine, can float and respond inside this network of tension. But we don't think of it that way. We talk about the spine as a column. On the right, you see a tensegrity tower. It's a sculpture by a man named Kenneth Snelson. It's in the Washington National Mall in Washington. And you can see that it's more similar in quality to the spine than the Washington Monument is. So how do we learn to behave more like biotensegrities and less like stacks of bricks? Well, it's helpful to think or imagine back to prehistoric times how the body might have functioned in those days. So our prehistoric ancestors had to move their bodies in order to survive. So you could imagine what kind of movements they might have had to do to kill their breakfast or herd their cattle. So they'd be crouching or throwing or digging or lifting, carrying stuff, and none of that would be predictable or repetitive. So constantly changing movement, large body movements. Also, they would be traveling in bare feet or skins on uneven terrain, which had pebbles and thorns in it, so their feet had to be extremely mobile to navigate the ground. And that mobility in the feet would play up through the whole fascial system, so every joint in the body would have to respond to the movements of the feet. So that's an example of micro-movement in a sense. And these movements, large and small, must have kept their fascia healthy. I like to think that anyway. And they had to have a panoramic view of their surroundings. They had to have 360-degree awareness through all their senses, through hearing, sight, olfactory, feeling sense. And it's as if they had eyes in the backs of their heads. But with us, we're always looking forward, just this way, forward. So let's practice something. I want to see if you can feel the benefit of having a more broad peripheral awareness. So you need to stand up again. So you could pandiculate. It's a good idea. There's certain noises that go with pandiculation. Yeah, it could be louder. Okay, so find a detail somewhere around you, not a person, but something you could look at. It could be the screen, or it could be exit sign, or thermostat, some detail that you could gaze at with a lot of intensity of vision, that you have to write a report about this thing, and it's due tomorrow, and your job depends on it, so really look. Look hard. Keep that intensity. And notice your breathing. Notice where it's located in your body. Notice the relationship between your torso and your neck and jaw and head. Notice the sensation in your eyes. Notice where your weight is on your feet and how big you feel in general. Okay, so relax that, just shake it out. Yeah, we want to neutralize ourselves so we can do something else. Thank you. So now, put your fingers out like this, wiggle your fingers, and you can see peripherally, without still looking at me, you can still see what's beyond your fingers. You could put your hands down now and just keep looking so that you have a sense of the periphery of the room. And you also notice something about what's above your head. You can feel it. And because you walked in here, you know what's behind you. You have a kinesthetic memory of what's behind you. So you have a broad perceptual awareness. Yeah, so I want you to see if you can keep that and then turn and look at your same object that you looked at before. And I'd like to suggest some things that may or may not be different. They're different when I teach this to different people. So I think it's possible that you're breathing lower in your rib cage, not so high in your upper chest. I think your eyes feel softer, and that you feel less merged with that object. There's more of a sense of you being here and it being over there. Also, it's possible that you see the object in its context, so your report is going to be more interesting. Okay. So great, thank you very much. I like to think of this as tensegrity of perception. So what I mean by that is by having these little feelers out in all directions, you establish a virtual network in the space, a virtual network of potential directions of movement through the space that actually helps support your body. I think you felt that you had better posture the second time, yes? You were bigger. Yeah, and so this awareness of our surroundings helps our bodies open up on the inside as well as on the outside. So we have better posture. We actually have more strength, which if you stay for the little class afterwards, I can show you that. So picture the movements you make to get to work, to get up, get your breakfast, go to work, and the movements that you make while you're at work. It might be different at Google than it is other places, but generally in offices, your movements are curtailed. You don't have a lot of movement. Most of it is in the forward plane, and your perceptions are narrowed. So I think it's important for us humans to acknowledge that the amazing conveniences that we're living with in this time may actually be diminishing our body's natural capacity for movement and perception. So we want to change that, I think. What can we do about sitting and standing and moving in the workplace now? So an expensive ergonomic chair is not the answer because it doesn't guarantee that you're going to sit in it in a balanced way. This chair, like many, has a dip towards the back of the seat. So that dip tends to roll the pelvis back and invite your spine to lean against the backrest. Most modern chairs are like this. You slide back. Car seats are the worst. Those bucket seats are designed to prevent movement. If human spines don't need back support when we're standing up, why would we need them when we're seated? Well, we don't. As long as the pelvis is sitting at the right inclination. So that inclination involves having a greater than 45-degree angle between the hip and the thigh. So this is Charles, and you can see that he's sitting more upright on the left, and his weight, some of his weight is being borne through his feet and his legs. About maybe 40% of his weight is borne through legs and feet. And so he has a broader base of support when his thighs are slanting downhill that way. And that forward inclination of the pelvis creates an automatic lift through the spine. In the other picture where he's sitting in a lower chair, that invites his pelvis to roll back, like I was describing modern chairs are inviting you to do in these chairs right here. And so he's sitting on his tailbone, on his buttocks flesh. His whole torso is compressed. He looks duller. His head is poking forward, you know. So let's practice this. So unfortunately, these chairs don't raise and lower, but we can make do. I think you can feel something, if you don't mind, sitting more forward on them. So imagine that's a bench or a stool, not a chair with a back. Yeah, already that's better. See, you can do it. All right, so on purpose, I'd like you to roll back, just roll this part of your anatomy back like Charles is doing in the right-hand picture. And notice what happened to your spine and torso. You compress. You stay there. I want you to really feel it. So you're sitting on your buttocks flesh, right? Maybe on your tailbone. Take a nice, full, easy breath. Yeah, so it's like really not easy to do that, you know. But we get used to this. We drink a lot of coffee because we're not getting enough oxygen. All right, stay there. One more time, one more thing. I'd like you to notice how creative you feel in that position. And then, just from there, roll your pelvis forward. So you can think of it different ways. You can think of having your pubic bone farther from your belly button. You can think of having your tail moving more in back behind you. And you're sitting now on the flesh of your thighs rather than the flesh of your buttocks. Does that make sense? And you feel there's more weight on your feet, so you have more support. Yeah. So I'd like to take this a little bit farther, if you don't mind, reaching underneath yourself. Find your left sit bone. It's just in front of the gluteal flesh, and your right sit bone. And while you're back there, find your coccyx. Just touch it so you really, really know where it is. Okay, so now stay seated on your thighs and look down inside yourself. You'll see that those 3 points make a triangle. Does that make sense? You feel that? Nod your head. These lights are glary. I can't see. All right, so that triangle is called the posterior triangle of your pelvic floor, or the anal triangle of the pelvic floor. And notice now, if you roll back and sit more towards the buttocks, that anal triangle got smaller, more compressed. So that area is at the bottom of your gut tube. It connects all the way up to your throat. So how well can you digest your lunch when you're in that compressed position? Let's roll forward now once more, and we're going to take this still a little bit farther. This is a female pelvic floor, but the anatomy of the muscular apparatus is pretty much the same for all genders. And you notice that triangle. I outlined the anal triangle. And notice at the bottom the anal coccygeal ligament. That's a little tiny slip of fascia between your anal sphincter and your coccyx. So we're going to experiment with a micro movement of that. So you need to be sitting comfortably upright on your thighs, not leaning back on this backrest, and see if you can draw your coccyx just a few millimeters closer to your anal sphincter without disturbing anything else. That's good, you're doing it. All right, so let's undo it. So go back the other way. See if you can just imagine that ligament lengthening, your coccyx lengthening back. Okay, so I wish you could see yourselves, because there's this, you're all sitting with nice posture, but there's this diminishing. Maybe you could feel it inside yourself, deep inside your, anybody? Let's do it again. You might feel it. So be open and big and on your thighs, on your feet. And just move the coccyx forward towards the anal sphincter. And there's just a slight shriveling up inside. And then reverse it, go the other way. Yeah. So there's a difference in what happens inside your body when there's tension around this area. Most of us have fallen on our coccyx or had some kind of injury to the pelvic floor sometime in our life. And yet we don't speak of it except jokes on late night TV. You know? It's important to think about it. The interoceptors in your fascia help you feel that subtle change in your posture that happens because of your tail space. So I can't resist talking about this. It's in the news, right, this thing? I've been teaching sitting for a long time, and I've wondered why it is that it's harder for men to comfortably be seated upright in the pelvis, harder for men than women. So I've been asking around, and what people have told me is that there can be an uncomfortable friction between the skin of the scrotum, the underwear, and the jeans. So all of that kind of rubs together like layers of fascia. So in order to sit upright, it would require a manual adjustment you're not going to make in public, right? So men have also told me that underwear that supports the genitals in a more forward position makes it easier to sit upright in the pelvis. So I'm not going to tell you what kind of underwear to wear, guys. Really not. But I will tell you that the orientation of your pelvis makes a huge difference to the decompression of your spine and to your posture going forward. So take a look at old men walking down the street and notice they have no tail space. I promise you, they don't. Okay, so here, if you can see, there's a blue cushion that Melanie is about to sit down on. It's a disc about this big, and you blow it up with air, but not very much, so it's not bouncy. It's more like sitting on a waterbed. So when she sits on it, there can be a subtle reverberation. You might see a subtle reverberation up her spine as her pelvis just sort of floats on that cushion. So that's actually helping to pump fluids into those microfibers. It qualifies as a micro movement, and micro movements are good for your fascia. There are new articles every day about the kind of exercise that you can do to maintain your heart health, your brain health, your longevity. I'm talking about your fascial health. And sitting is particularly detrimental for fascia. The hip joint is a ball and socket joint, like this. And that's great for movement. It's terrible for stability. So when you sit with your legs at that angle for long, long hours without much movement, the fascia around your hip and down through your legs and thighs gets tighter and matted and more uncomfortable. So it would be great if when you take a break, it's recommended that people who sit go 5 minutes every hour moving. Have you heard that? Every hour you're supposed to get up and move for 5 minutes. I think it's probably hard to do. But if you did it, it would be better to do this right, to do this than to just walk around, because it's non-directional movement. It's innovative movement. So think about, what if people did this around Google? It would be just like taking a coffee break, you know? It's not shameful to move your body. It's not embarrassing to do what your body needs. You just simply have to recognize that your body needs it. And I think you need to take perception breaks, because looking at a focused object for a long time induces a sort of a hypnotic trance. And you know that. You work and work and you think, well, just one more thing, and then I'll get up, right? Just have to keep going. So you need to purposefully break the trance every so often. One way is to put attention into the soles of your feet. So you could do that right now. Just drop your attention down there. Feel the skin of your feet inside your shoes. You could even feel your feet breathing like you did before. You could feel the little cleavages in between your toes. Feel your toenails. But you're still listening to me, right? But you're also present in the lower part of your body. I think what happens with computers and technology so often is that the energy of the being gets drawn up into this part, upper body. I also recommend using urgency as a trigger to widen your perceptual field. So you know how you developed that broad perceptual field earlier? Okay, so let's try something. If you just take out your phone right now, just reach it down and get your phone. Okay, so notice your state the minute you have the phone in your hand. Right? Can you feel what I'm talking about? It's like you go there. It's like you disappear into the phone. So the phone could be a cue. A device could be a cue. So keep the phone in your hand, but take a moment to widen your perceptual field. So however you do that, especially think of the space behind your body. That really helps. And keep that space and then check Twitter. You can do it. It might slow you down a nanosecond. I don't think that's bad. But it's a way of being present with your device rather than present inside your device. So when you're not at work, or maybe even when you are, because you're here, you could sit on the floor. And the benefit of that is it opens up those hip joints that have been compressed and restricted by sitting on too many chairs. You could have lunch sitting on the floor. You could watch a movie. And unless you override the impulse, you pandiculate every morning when you wake up. It primes your body, it primes your fascia for the day ahead. So it's good. Don't override it. If we're going to persist doing sedentary work, we need to become less self-conscious about our need to move. So here, see if you can see the way the movement translates through her legs and hips up into her spine. All of them. The burdens on their heads help decompress the spine, so spinal movement is more accessible. But notice the harmony in the rhythm of these people. And then there's us. I think we need to create a culture, environments, and designs that are kinder to the human body than the hard, flat surfaces and square rooms that we've boxed ourselves into. Google is known for innovation, so I'd like to leave you with a challenge. I hope you can use your design thinking, your engineering, to help redesign the way the world works so that people might have to move more in order to do their work. I don't know how this could happen, but I think you do. And if you move more, two things will happen. It generates creative ideas, and it improves your posture. So the last screen is just some websites for more information. You can learn about fascial fitness. I just briefly glossed over it. The man's name, Robert Schleip, is he's a Rolfer in Germany. He's also one of the foremost fascia researchers. So he's developed a program. Then there's Jean-Claude Gimberto's website, in case you're interested in those images. The International Association of Structural Integrators lists about 17 different schools which teach the legacy of Ida Rolf, so you can learn more about that. And my website will tell you when my new book is happening. And I have a newsletter, but I don't send it out very often, so you don't get inundated by stuff by me. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, there's a question.
There's a
Great.
question. So, when you said sit forward, I did that, and I feel good, and it's up, but I get tired, and then when I lean back, I feel like I'm resting again. So how do I not feel like I'm using all my muscles or something to sit properly?
Well, you will be using muscles that you don't use because you're leaning back habitually, and I don't know how long you've been leaning back.
Many decades.
But a decade or two,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so you need to work through that little by little. I think of titration, when you just go drop by drop to make a change rather than expecting yourself to sit upright all the time. But it really will help to open up that tail space and to get a broad support.
So in
under
practice,
there.
I should just practice a little bit?
Just do it a little bit and sit back. Maybe you could associate sitting upright with certain tasks
Okay,
and leaning back with other kinds of tasks.
okay. And then try and bias myself more towards sitting up.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
And exercise. Go dancing.
All right, can I have a prescription for that?
Yeah. I'm glad you felt it, though, And it does take a little bit of sincere desire to make that change. And also in movie theaters, you have to just lean back because otherwise no one can see around you. Yeah, there's one.
I'm one trend behind. I still use the ball. I was just curious what you think about that.
Sitting on a ball? Yeah, well, that cushion, I showed you the cushion. That's available. You search for it, you'll find it. So that was my solution, because the problem with the sitting on a ball is it makes you sit like this, right? So I think it's better for the hip joints not to be stuck in that wide position. And also the ball tends to roll back a little too much. So I really like that cushion idea, because it's almost like sitting on a ball.
What's the cushion called?
It's called Disc-O-Sit, and it's on Amazon. Disc-O-Sit, yeah, it's a disc on which you sit.
You were talking about having peripheral vision, and as a glasses wearer, I wonder if you have any thoughts or
Yeah.
insights on contacts versus glasses. I definitely find my awareness is much more like when this is all blurry. So I wonder if you had feelings on that.
For sure, I wear glasses too, but I noticed that, and this thing that I taught you is one of the most important things I ever teach anybody, is this awareness of the space, especially the space behind you. There's something magical about that makes you feel supported. And it has, I don't think it matters whether you wear glasses or not. I mean, the glasses do focus our attention towards that forward gaze. But that doesn't mean we can't be aware. And you felt the effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? There's an effect. That's what matters.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, lots of questions. I'm going to go over here first.
So I've heard over the years sort of two competing notions of posture, and you touched on one very nicely, which is this tensegrity idea that the body is a dynamic system supported by elasticity and by structure. And then a second one that talks about, this kind of rootedness where you're
Stacks of blocks. Yeah.
stacking your bones and trying to make sure that you're well supported through your skeleton. Are those actually contradictory, or is there some underlying principle behind them both?
I like to think that they both work. But if you could have a stack of blocks that was floating in a tensegral apparatus, wouldn't that be better than just compression, block upon block upon block? So I think Ida Rolf's idea was stacks of blocks, that you saw it in her logo. And she also talked a lot about Buckminster Fuller and tensegrity. So she had both things happening when she taught us. And I think she just had it both ways and hadn't integrated them. And I think that's still true. And I know that there are times when I'm a stack of blocks and I can't help it, But if you just move more towards the conception that you're a tensegrity, I think already that makes a change in how you embody this flesh. And maybe I'm being too poetic.
Well, I think this is hard, and I've wrestled with it myself. So
Yeah, so both and is what I'd say. But go towards the tensegrity side as much as you can. And did you understand what I said about the awareness of space being a way of perceiving tensegrally? Does that make sense to you? I can't see you very well. Are you nodding your heads? Okay, great. Thanks.
So you made me feel a little hostile towards my desk chair.
Good.
Is just adding a cushion sufficient if it's tipped back like that, or what else should I get?
Well, I like those cushions. It doesn't work for everybody, but I've tried every kind of little chair thing you could find because I write books, And I've found that having that cushion that moves a little bit is beneficial. There are chairs that move. They're very expensive. They're on like a spring, and you can find them, What else you should do is bring your headphones and jam for 5 minutes once an hour. I'm
Okay,
serious.
But like look for a chair that's flat, or
Well, the chair should be at a height, if I can pantomime this, that your hips are higher than your knees. And the more high, the better. So the more you perch rather than sit, the better, because that invites your pelvis to roll forward, which gives you a lift through your lumbar spine and on up through the rest of you. You could email me, send me a picture of your chair, and I answer emails. So if you're struggling and you say, should I buy this chair?
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
So is just standing all day at your desk healthier than sitting at your desk all day with no motion?
You're going to move more if you're standing, I think. Maybe not. What I have at my kitchen sink, which is the place where I stand the most, and also I have a platform for my computer that's on a shelf, so it's like a standing desk. And both of those places I've put a pebble bath doormat. Have you seen those? Doormat made of pebbles. So that allows your feet a little sensory experience. Gives you a little movement. They're more and more things coming through the internet of standing desks with different kinds of wobble boards, and there's one that looks like a skateboard, so you're like going like this. I don't know how it would be. You have to tell me.
Thanks.
Having stood extensively as well as using many chairs, the chair is keeping you from your normal fidgeting effectively.
Yeah.
And I think that's why standing works so well, because so many of us tend to shift from one leg to another, lean one way and then the other, and the chair largely prevents that movement while standing allows it. Just standing,
Yeah, you can
otherwise it's
fidget,
horrible.
you know, yeah. So fidget away. Thank you. That's really true about fidgeting.
About those last two videos you showed,
Yeah.
what I observed most distinctively between them is the earlier video, the developing world video with the women carrying things on their head. Besides the fact that they may have been functioning more efficiently just because they had to, because of the weights on their heads, they were walking in what you might call, Caribbean time. They were walking at the rate that was comfortable for their body, so their body resonated naturally. The people in the urban video were rushing but not jogging. So
Right.
they were accelerating a normal walk beyond the natural speed of a normal walk, at which point the body's resonant frequency doesn't match it anymore.
Right.
We are embarrassed to jog because people will get upset. They will think that something is wrong, yet we feel the need to get somewhere faster because we're on the clock. That is what I feel like is what drives that. Though some of the people clearly had health problems that made it difficult.
Well, sure,
Walk
sure.
naturally.
But I showed the difference because just so you see that,
Yes.
Quality of experience. Your mirror neurons pick up on the movement that you look at. So first, about the first video, I have a hunch that it was slowed down slightly. It was a little bit in slow motion, so it wasn't quite accurate. And the other one, if any of those people jogged, they would be jogging on hard surfaces. So there's no rebound, no give from the earth. So it would be jarring to the spine and the whole body, So I'm all for it, for more of us running to do things, but we've paved paradise, So I don't know the answer, but I'm suggesting that you do collectively. Yeah. Thank you so much for those questions. That was great. Thank you.